Hello, everyone. Welcome to those of you who are with us. We're just going to give it a few more minutes, and then Stephen will get started.
So yeah, this is live. Okay.
I think you're just going to have to go ahead.
Oh yeah.
Because I can't hear from it's from the app thing, and I can try to do it from here, but I don't know if I can.
Okay. And I'm not gonna. This is it. I'm not seeing anybody else. Okay. Right, folks. It's officially 6:00 on February the 1st, and so I guess we're gonna start in. Welcome. This is our first live thing through the Substack, so we're having technical difficulties, but that's okay. I guess we'll just roll through with it and then just see what happens. Sound familiar to all those folks who've been to the school before? Probably sounds very familiar. But it's always interesting these days, for somebody like me, to have to jump over this technological hurdle to actually get to any kind of the work that I want to do here. So I'm kind of used to seeing other folks, and I guess I'm just going to have to deal with seeing a few of your little names here at the side. And I guess I will just start in, and we'll see how that goes. So I'm here today to talk about the school, Sacred Gardener School. So one thing we do at the school that I think makes it quite difficult to speak about, and it's just something that just isn't done, which is there's a very strong aspect of the school that is practical, traditional, physical skills. And there's a very strong part of the school that's philosophical or spiritual. And so if I talk about the skills stuff, and I talk about, gardening or herbalism or different kinds of craft and handwork and stuff, then, the thought is that this is this is what the school is. And then, if I'm talking about spiritual things and having to kind of reprogram ourselves and deprogram ourselves and things like that, then, you'd be like, oh, it's like a mystic school. It's like a spiritual school. So it is both. It is both a very practical initiation back into the physical reality that used to sustain us and that we were very connected with. And then have the privilege in my life to still be connected with that. And so largely what's going on with that stuff is the school happens at 4 different points during the growing season. And you're essentially just joining me in my day's work. I mean, that sounds a little bit unappealing, but it's shifted around. But just to say, the things that I'm teaching are the things that I'm doing right at that time of year. So if it's spring and we're talking about starting seeds, we're talking about digging roots up for food, we're talking about the first green shoots of things, the first flowers, the first edible bits. We're talking about grafting. So these are all things that happen in the spring. And out of necessity, really, if you're teaching them in real time and it's all handwork, then it has to be at that time of year. So I guess that kind of, I'm going to talk a little bit about kind of the structure of the school and how the school came to be. Just framing it at the start there by saying, there is this very spiritual, philosophical aspect of the school, and there's this very practical, physical aspect to the school. So you can kind of keep that in mind as I plow through here and try to kind of cover some things. So, I've been doing workshops for 40 years, or a little bit more, actually. You learn a lot in that time. I've learned a lot about what works and what doesn't work. And essentially, like if you're doing a 1 hour or 2 hour or a half day or 1 day or even a 2-day workshop, you can teach something physical. You can teach a skill. You can do that with great success in that amount of time. And somebody kind of wanders away with that particular skill. They may use it, they may not, whatever. So I taught that kind of thing for a lot of years. Very, very skill-based stuff. And then when we started to kind of work more with the philosophical, spiritual aspect of things, what became very evident was that somebody's coming from their urban existence and their very, bombarded reality. All these things are going on in their lives all the time. And then they plunk down here. And for me to kind of take them into a deeper place with the earth is just not possible in 1 or 2 days. Not possible because you haven't even really arrived yet. That's the thing, is when we travel, our body and maybe our mind arrives, but the deeper parts of ourselves take a couple days to catch up with us and to settle into where we're actually at. So from doing workshops for all these years, I kind of realized like the second, third, fourth days, these are the days when you can move people's energy enough that they can hold the teachings you're giving them. It's not just like some abstract thing you're dropping on them, but you can actually help them open up to receive it and then give them the ground to put the seed in, like a way to hold this thing. And then, of course, the last day or even the day before you go, if it's a 5-day thing, you're already thinking of home. So you're not here again. That's okay. we do something practical, usually physical, the last day because some people want to get going early and others don't. So we can kind of sit in the wisdom when we're just working on the physical things for that last little bit. So we kind of worked this out and kind of figured, okay, this is like the optimum thing for this real journey, for this real experience to have like 5 days as a kind of a minimum. Did that for a lot of years. And then so people would come and maybe they'd do the shift, maybe they wouldn't to hold the information, but then they would just go. And as often as not, I would never see them again or hear from them again. So I don't know if the seeds took. I don't know if the vision took, you know? And so that's a hard thing. And it's a real fault built into the system of workshops is that at the workshop you're on a real high and you're with everyone else's energy and you're kind of peeking out at this thing, and then you leave and you go back home and it's just you again and none of that other energy. And then if you're never coming back, then that's it. And you'll take from it what you can, and that's okay. Like I said, I did that for a lot of years, but at a certain point I started to realize this idea of creating a continuum and creating a container with the group, because that can't happen in 1 or 2 days. I mean, it can happen, but when it's weeks in and you're really intimate with these people and you're going into the depths, it happens at a different level. And the community thing is such an important part of what happens here. You know, like I guide things, I create the space, and I have teachings, but I know that what makes it stick, or one of the things that gives it the rich earth for that seed to grow, is the community, that's formed. And, you know, like it sounds really hokey to say, like, we become a family or a tribe, you know, and, you know, I can hear, you know, certain reactions to that already, but the reality is we need it like crazy. We need that kindred group. And so most of us never have it. We have 1 or 2 people that we can talk to about certain things, like spiritual things or certain intimate things, you know, that you would trust well enough. But when you actually have a group and it's a safe container and you get to know these people over time, the depth and the kind of sense of belonging and these things that you can't plan them, you can't buy them. When they happen, and it happens every time. So even though I can't count on it, it does happen, and it happens kind of on its own, you know. And a lot of that is like when we first see people, um, you know, a lot of us have been really jerked around, suppressed, misunderstood, all sorts of stuff throughout our lives. And so when we see strangers, we don't necessarily trust them. And so a certain part of ourself kind of shuts down just automatically when you're in a group of strangers, to kind of protect yourself. But the thing is, so we can listen with our minds, we can do stuff with our bodies. So when we're in that state, we can learn one of those physical skills. We can learn a traditional skill. We can learn something like that. But we can't change as a person. We can't shift in order to receive some of these teachings that I'm offering out. It just doesn't go that way. You have to feel safe. Your emotional body has to feel safe to be able to absorb some of these things. So this is where not just the 5 days, but the 4 sessions of 5 days is so important because these people become, again, like a family. Like, I'm not saying absolutely everybody gets along impeccably, but people do get along incredibly well. And part of it is the hosting. Part of it is, I don't let things go to a certain place, but also is like the introductory ceremonies, different things that we do together right from the start binding people, and people trust other people. So, you have this deep experience, you go away, you digest it, and that takes time. It takes time to integrate the teachings because you have to create fertile ground, like in your own life. So this is the problem with just going to a workshop, and you can have the most brilliant things dropped on you or whatever, but you haven't created any ground for those seeds to take yet. And so this is the whole thing of the 2 years and the 4 cycles, is that after the first session, there's a certain amount of deconstructing, deprogramming that happens, as well as some positive programming. In that first session, I reteach what we understand our history to be. And it doesn't start 2,000 years ago, it starts 300,000 years ago. And the whole thing that we call history is just this little thin veneer covering up our indigenous souls. So this is the whole thing, is there's reprogramming that happens intellectually. There's reprogramming that happens emotionally, this trust thing, right? All these things have to come together. And then when you're doing the skills and you're learning things at the same time, then you have something to put that into, some energy to put that into, just excuse me a sec. So, this is all speaking to the kind of the structural, like, configuration essentially of the school. Um, you wouldn't think these things necessarily matter, but they're hugely important actually, because when you come back that second time, you've already changed some things in your life and you're rethinking, maybe rehearing a few of the things from the first session. And then you get to re-exert your question. You get to ask your questions again, and you get them answered again when you already have some grounding a little bit. So that helps. And then again in the third session, and this is the second year, and by then people's lives are changing. And again, I would hope for this. This is the hope of the school. You don't come to this school to just learn a couple little tricks and a couple things about gardening and this and that. No, I'm going to change your life. I'm going to change the way you see reality. And I know it's a huge claim to make, but that's what my goal is here, right? And I'm going to do it as gently as I possibly can, because I don't want to scare you away. I want this to happen. I want it to happen for you, and I want it to happen for me. I want it to happen for everyone in the world. We have to come back into this place of alignment. And in order to do that, we have to feel safe. And we have to trust our teacher. We have to trust the people we're around and all such things. So, these things take time, and it takes time. And with each session, you have time to integrate your knowledge. And that's the whole trick here, is integrating your knowledge into your life. So not only does it change your life, it enriches it, right? So this is kind of basically all just talking about the structure, the context, and kind of how that works over the period. And then we thought about doing it in 1 year. So it would be spring, early summer, late summer, fall, all in 1 year. But, there's not many people who can take a month off work. Most people have at least a couple weeks holidays. In theory, it's only the Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday that you have to take off. I do encourage people to take a day off after the sessions, though, because it helps with integration as opposed to just jumping right back in. But just to say, um, this was the first thing that made us stretch it out into 2 years. Is that seemed like a more reasonable amount of time that people could take off. Oh, and of course, money to generate for the tuition of the school. That way it's spread out over 2 years. I think it's like, uh, anyways, I'm not sure what the price is now, but just to say, you can pay it all at once, but you can also pay it over the 2 years. And so that makes everything so much more possible for many other people. And then we've kind of created one lower tier where you can pay kind of less, and there's a suggested price. And then just this winter, we had a donor, a benefactor, which makes a huge difference because that means we can actually make another tier where maybe we can offer the school for kind of half price kind of thing, like cost essentially. Um, and so, uh, I encourage you, if you are economically strapped, and that's the only thing holding you back from coming to the school, we can make it happen for you because of these benefactors. And if anybody happens to be of a like mind out there, a supporter of ours, and wants to give us a donation to help with other people's tuition, I'll just put that out there now too, since that's kind of since the topics came up. But I think one of the kind of metaphors there too that I think works really well is this idea that, you know, we eat, we take material in, and it doesn't take very long to eat, right? A few minutes, maybe if you go really slow, 15 minutes, 20 minutes. But then how long does it take you to digest that material, right? It takes you a whole day, basically, to digest that. So I would say the school is the equivalent. There's these very intense feeding periods, and then there's a lot of digestion. And digestion is integration of the material, right? Just like what you're doing with food, you're digesting it into your body to make yourself strong. And this, you're digesting it into your mind and your spirit to make your spirit strong. So that's kind of the structure. Um, we hit a maximum. We had a couple years where we had some pretty big classes, and we realized that 20 was it. 20 was the maximum, because for me to have contact with everybody, for nobody to kind of drop off the edge and out of the scene, um, for the infrastructure here at the farm, I think there was a few other reasons why we settled on 20. Um, and so that's the kind of maximum for the number for your class. And then the minimum is around a dozen, because we've found over the years that you might lose a person or two as the sessions go on. So if you start with 8 or something, you might end up with 4 or 5. And the thing is for us to economically do it is one thing, but also just the energy. Again, this group energy thing is hard to put your finger on and hard to explain, but there's something that happens when there's about a dozen people, like the fact that, Christ had a dozen disciples and all that stuff. I mean, it's symbolic, it's astrological, there's all sorts of things to it, but 12 is a magical number. And it's one of those things where it creates more. And so this is why we need a certain number of people, is it really helps with the kind of collective buzz, the energy that's going on. When you have a certain number of people, kind of happens almost on its own. So that's the minimum and kind of maximum number. Now, let's see, where can we start here? Um, I know, like, I guess as the teacher and stuff, I'm supposed to talk a bunch about how I know what I know and what qualifies me to teach. And yeah, well, I don't really do that. So I've been teaching for a long time, like 40 years. And so I guess what I've learned, like in that time, is that our bodies are incredibly wise. Everybody's body is incredibly wise, and we absorb things with our body when we're in the presence of somebody else. Now, I had apprentices for many, many years, and I would have some people saying, "Oh, I want to learn to be a herbal shaman." I'd have other people who'd come, "I want to come, learn how to homestead, come back to the land." Other people who come and they're like, "I want to be a teacher," or whatever. But what we want isn't necessarily what's for us. And this is a funny thing about life is that we want certain things for ourselves, but how would we even know what's best for us? You know what I mean? Like when you're looking at your children grow up, they want certain things, but it's not best for them, but you let them have it because they have to have their own journey. And to a certain degree, that's what my apprenticeships were like here too. People would come and I'd be like, "Okay." And then we'd see what happens. And some people had an incredible spiritual capacity. They were like a freaking vortex, and I would just pour myself into them because they were ready for it. Other people were there begging me for the knowledge, and I was mute. I couldn't give them anything. So this is a really weird thing with me in the teaching is it's a very magical thing at this point. My qualification comes from experience. Yeah, I got papers and stuff, but I don't even talk about them because they're irrelevant. What is relevant is right now and what you're feeling and what comes out of my mouth. And then we go from there. And if you don't believe me and you don't trust me, then you turn away. And that's totally understandable. That's the deal. But if I can speak to some part of you and catch this deeper part of your spirit, you're like, "Hey, I can hear this guy knows something. I'm going to listen." So I could have a whole bunch of qualifications, all these different things I've done. Um, but it doesn't mean shit. You have to hear that thing in somebody to trust them enough for them to be your teacher. And I've been through this a lot. So I've been this whole self-deluded guru kind of thing. I did that. I'd done that like 30 years ago. I thought I was that thing. And then some person that you taught does some horrible thing, like kills themselves or did some crime or something like that. And then you're like, okay, right? This isn't me. This isn't me. I'm just a vehicle for you to evolve. That's it. It's not me teaching. It's you teaching. I'm just reminding you of stuff. This is all I do is I just remind people of stuff. I'm very mindful of certain things, and so I never forget about them. They're never out of my sight. And that enables me to pass that on to you energetically. This is the weird thing, is I know that, yeah, I have lots of teachings and really amazing ones, mind-blowing, revelatory, but it doesn't matter. It's the energy in my body and the energy in your body that's going to change your life, that's going to make you shift just a little bit. And then suddenly, all these kind of misconceptions that you had about yourself and reality clear, and that makes space for new perceptions. And I'm helping you form those perceptions. I'm not giving them to you. I make people work for it. I don't give away that much ever, even in the school. I'm there to hold the ground. I'm there for you to come into yourself. And I can go, wrong way. Right way. And that's about all I do. There's a few people here from the class, and if folks are wanting to ask questions, we can do that in a little bit. But, I think they'll tell you that this is the heart of it, is that something is disenchanted with this kind of spell that's on us about materialism. That has to be the number one thing. We come from this incredibly materialistic culture, and yet we hate the mother. We hate the earth. We've been totally trained into this horrible situation. That's why we're so obsessed with material reality, is because we won't recognize the mother. Anyways, I'm getting ahead of myself, but just to say, there has to be a receptivity, and that land has to be cultivated over time. So, yeah, and I managed yet again to not talk about myself. Okay. So, let me see where to go now. I guess I could talk about the sessions. This stuff is all pretty well written up. The sessions are pretty well written up, 1 through 4, on the website. But I will just go over them briefly. And again, nothing's fixed. I don't have a fixed curriculum. No, I don't do that, because then it's already dead to begin with. All my all my knowledge is living. It's not something I'm recollecting from books. So I don't teach that way either. I see who's here. We do the opening circle, and I start getting guidance about which way we should go. I've ran about 8 years, so 8 separate classes. I think this is the 9th year. So they're never the same. There's people who have taken the class twice, and they've done that because by the end of it, they realize I'm not going to teach the same thing if they come back, right? And it's partially because they're there. They're changing everything, right? It's this whole thing that in our perception of things, we change reality. So the people who show up here make up the class. And so at some point after the first session, the name of the class comes to me, and then you're part of that class. And so last year's class were those who came to bask in eternity. It's got to be one of the best names for a class, I think. Anyways, there's certain kind of indicators to me, and then it's like, okay, this is this group, and it's got a group spirit, and I can't control it. It's up to all of us. It's like an experiment, and I'm part of it. Now, I've done it a whole bunch of times, but I can't predict the outcome. I can't make the outcome happen. It's a living, dynamic thing. And it's so exciting because of that, right? Like, you literally don't know what's going to happen the next day. I might tell you and I might not, but just to say, I don't know what's going to happen the next day. When I get up in the morning, I do my offerings, I do my meditation, I start getting information in, and then it shifts things this way or that way. I have certain things that I want to cover every session. So when I say I don't have a fixed curriculum, I mean, I'm not like following some curriculum, but I do have things that we have to cover. And it's because each session is preparing you for the next session. Okay, so that said, Um, the first session happens first thing in the spring, so it's very much about wild food and wild medicine. And we go out off the farm and we go here on the farm and we lots and lots of foraging and looking for stuff. And, a big part of this whole foraging thing is teaching people how to receive and not just take. Because with foraging, we all think of it the wrong way. We think of it as like free food. Yeah, we can just take what we want. No, this is the most precious food in the world. It's self-generated. And so if you get in there and you mess with it in a bad way, you could very easily lose it. And so foraging has to be done. That's why I like the word wild crafting, because it implies more than just taking. You're crafting, you're thinking about the plant and it's in perpetuity. You're thinking about how it's going to keep growing. And in fact, you become a protector of that plant after for foraging it. You become one of its allies. It becomes your ally. You become its ally. So all these things are very important, and so you might have harvested fiddleheads or leeks or something like that, but I'm going to talk about it and show you to do it in a sustainable way, in a spiritually, ethically clean way. You're going to learn things for sure. I don't care how much you know about wild food. I've been doing this for 40 years. So, like every little aspect of it from how the plants grow to different ways to prepare it, I'm steeped in this stuff, right? So it can't help but teach you. And then, in the first session, there's other skills. There's starting seeds. There's preparing garden beds. There's grafting. This is all stuff that has to happen at that time of year. So those are almost a day each. Different things are half a day each. And then really, this first session is to set the groundwork for the next 3. And what it does is it tries to give us some common language and some common mythology and some common understandings. Because if I'm going to teach you something of a spiritual nature, no, because we all have totally different experience with spirituality. We have different names for even the same things or the same name for different things. So we have to all get on the same page in this first thing. And so there's a lot of deprogramming, right? I go back to, mostly biblical programming, Old Testament stuff that we've been living with 4,000 years, these misconstrued ideas. And then a lot of reprogramming. So an alternate version of history that you probably have never heard. Little pieces of it are coming out now more and more, but it's been clear to me for a lot of years that this is one of the ways we're hoodwinked, is that we think that, this is just the way people are. We're greedy, violent creatures or whatever, right? Because look, 2,000 years of that. We've been around 300,000 years in roughly the form that we're in. The whole idea of war, especially genocidal war, where you're using like steel weapons and stuff, super new thing. Nobody ever did that. It's a very new thing. And it came out of patriarchy and it came out of certain ways of thinking. And we're still stuck in it. And so you think, I'm not a warrior or a soldier. I'm not right wing. I don't believe in any of that stuff. You have no idea how much of a colonizer you are in your consciousness. It's the most brutal stuff to find out about yourself. Nobody wants to find it out. So it has to be done gently. You have to be shown it. And, you don't have to feel shameful about it. We all do already. We already know it. We have so much shame that we can't even move forward, most of us. So that's not what it's about. It's about deconstructing it so you can let it go. If you actually understand how somebody put a spell on you, or, how certain social constructs were created, it massively helps take them apart. I mean, this is the whole basis of feminism, is deconstruction. You look at a word or a sentence or a certain way of saying things that diminishes women, and then you take it apart. And in taking it apart, you claim back your power, right? And so that's what we're all doing here at the school, is we're claiming back our power. We're claiming back these, what I call daily rites of passage, that gave us spiritual integration, that gave us personal power, that gave us knowledge. And the tyranny of convenience. I'm not saying it's a conspiracy. Don't really believe that stuff. We're not that organized. It's the tyranny of convenience that's taken away our spirituality. You know? So just to say these things, you know, there's a lot of deprogramming that has to happen, and then there's a lot of reprogramming that has to happen. I can't just pull the rug out from under you and not give you anything to stand on, right? So that's a huge part of what's going on in the first session. And then that kind of leads us to our second session, which is later that summer. It's kind of at the harvest peak of summer. So lots of harvesting, lots of gardening. Like if the first one is about wild food and foraging, in a sense, the second is more about gardening, different ways of mulching, different ways of weeding, different ways of working the polyculture, because this is how I'm teaching you to garden. I'm not teaching you monocultural gardening. I grow everything in polyculture. And so this is kind of, again, lots of reprogramming. We're all very much trained into this Germanic way of gardening, where you control everything in the garden. You just want that one plant, and you think that it will produce the most if nothing else is around it and all that stuff. Well, you're wrong. That's all part of the programming. So anyways, lots of teachings about gardening, and more wild crafting, and more processing, lots of processing things at that time of year. The garlic's been harvested, so you learn why garlic is braided as a preservation technique. You learn lots of different things like that. And then, really, the first session and all these things, it's really to prepare for the heaviness of this second session in a lot of ways, because we're working with what I call the dark goddess. We're working with the goddess, and she is, light aspects and dark aspects. But in this particular ceremony, that is a day-long ceremony, there's preparation for it, but then also it takes a day of intense work. And part of that is entering into the ceremony through your personal wound. So again, this is why it doesn't happen the first session, because that'd just be too much. It's too much. So, this was something that was kind of given to me, was laid out for me to kind of be fairly clear about, to enter into this deeper relationship with the spirit of the earth. We have to clear our trauma. We can't be a locked down individual. Just knowing about nature does not connect you with nature. You have to be connected to your emotional body. Your emotional body and your spiritual body are one thing, or two halves of the same thing. So to be spiritually connected, you have to be emotionally connected. Otherwise, it's all just fake. It's just pretense. It's just in your head. But when it's real, boy, and you heal. And when we heal the earth. We heal each other. And so, there's a certain amount of pain and stress to get to that place in the ceremony. but it teaches you something that there's no other way you could learn this stuff. No other way. And some people are lucky enough to have been included in ceremonies, First Nations ceremonies, different kinds of traditional ceremonies, and that's amazing. You got a glimpse into something, you got a feel for something, but this is different because it's coming from me, and it's not coming from somebody else's tradition. And so the ceremony, it's meant to shift you, it's meant to heal you, and it's meant to give you integration so you can own it. It's not somebody else's ceremony, some other culture's ceremony. And so how'd you get to that place? How did I get to that place? 40 years of copying other people's ceremonies. Maybe not 40, 30 or something. Just to say, we all have to go through a process of emulating something to start to understand it, to start to be able to articulate it from our inside, from internally, not just mimicking somebody else. And so there's so many things you learn in ceremony. I I'm just realizing that I just started really talking and I've already spent 45 minutes. Okay. So, okay, the third session, the second year, this is what I would generally call the herbal session. By now you've integrated your emotional body, you've worked through some of your trauma, you're more conscious of yourself, you're conscious of your connection with the earth, with the ancestors, with the Great Mother. Now you're ready to work with the herbs. And it makes such a difference. Because if somebody just takes you on a herb walk and they show you all these herbs and what they are for, doesn't mean anything. Even if you have a good memory and you can remember it, you won't have the confidence to actually do it. Very, very unlikely. But when you can interact with the herbs, when you can actually feel them and they're telling you things, and you see other people in the class do it, and you see me do it repetitively, it starts to have a whole different feeling for it. And this is how herbs were traditionally taught. It wasn't an intellectual thing. It was a physical thing. First you worked with them, and then slowly, slowly you got to know their character. And then the teacher would line you up with certain abilities that the herb has. And then you'd have it, and you have it forever, and you have the confidence to use it. Okay, now I'm bumping along. The fourth session is in the fall of the second year. It's the harvest session. So it's very much about preservation. It's about making mead, miso, what else? Other ferments, kraut, sauerkraut, and kimchi, and things like that. And then the fourth is kind of equivalent to the second, in that we're going to get heavy again with you because we're going to work with the wounded masculine. We absolutely have to address these things, And when I started the school, I thought this was going to be the first thing I was going to talk about because, man, oh man, do we ever need it. But nope. Spirit was like, nah, that's the last thing you're going to teach them because then they'll be ready for it. It is so heavy getting into the sacred masculine. I mean, and the wounded masculine. There's so much wounding that has happened. And the women, the Me Too movement, and all the feminism for the last, since the 80s, basically, that whole wave of feminism has been reclaiming and working with the women's trauma. But we've worked very little with the men's trauma. Robert Bly, he had a bit of momentum going with it. And then basically we turned it into a joke now. Everyone just thinks it's a joke for men to get together and do drumming, and like it's been turned into a caricature. And we only just just started to kind of look at ourselves and reclaim who we are. And, one of my teachings from Art Solomon is this idea that women will and have to pick up their medicine first. And it's only after women have picked up their medicine that men can even begin to figure out what we actually are and what we're capable of. But all that trauma has to be dealt with first. You can't just jump into being this, whatever, healthy male. Mm-mm. Decades of work, right? I mean, it just takes so long to get there because we're all so fucked up. We're all so traumatized. We've all been through so much, and we live our lives and we bump along and we forget how messed up we are. But then when situations arrive like ceremony, something real like somebody dying, when something like that's happening, then it all comes back to us. All our traumas and all these things. And that's why you have to work through them voluntarily, because you're going to work through them in life. But, it's going to be so much harder if you don't kind of sign on to do it voluntarily. So I am not quite sure how I'm going to get questions, but with just over 10 minutes left, I'm wondering how that's going to happen, or if anyone does have any questions. Help. Maybe there is no questions. Like, this is a new format for me, so I have no idea. Oh, I hear Megan coming. Maybe she's got questions. Maybe not. I don't mind talking for a bit more if we're not going to go.
You see the chat?
I can, but I don't see any questions.
Sure.
Oh, okay. There we go.
I mean, you could just put Emily's there, so maybe you can just ask and see if anyone has any.
Sure.
I think she does right on there.
So, for just such an occurrence, I asked one of my graduate students to join us, Emily Doyle, and as a kind of a ringer, that maybe she could ask a question or answer a question. Let's see. Right. Okay. So if they're a gardener, a wild crafter, or herbalist, would they still benefit from attending? That's a great question. Or a gardener or anything like that. I would say immensely. Immensely. One of the things just in general is, even beside my teachings, just being in a group with 20 people always have little bits of information, special little bits of information. Everybody. It's some amazing things. So if you can listen, you're teaching something. This is how I learn, right? As I learn from my students, because everybody's got these little bits of information and it's just a matter of putting it all together. And so, you might be in a class with somebody who actually doesn't know anything about herbs, but they will ask certain questions or have certain observations that, and then the reality is there's always 3 or 4 actual herbalists in the school. And then there's myself. So you're also getting downloaded information from me, information from them, and then information from the plants, because I take you through this very, fairly strict protocol for how to address the plants and how to work into a place with them of integration where you can essentially receive information from the plants. So that's a really important thing. And, there's always, like, I think when people are learning how to garden or be a herbalist or something like that, it's actually a really good idea to work with a whole bunch of different people. I did, because it's going to teach you all different things, and then you can find yourself, your own path in there, So, yeah, I guess that's about it um, for that question. One other question that I'll ask for you that a lot of people, I think, have this question is they're like, I live in the city. I don't have a backyard. Like, what good is this course going to do me if it's all about like wild picking things and all this stuff? An immense amount it's going to do for you because, of course, not only are you going to learn all these plants, so when you go out for walks, you can forage, but it's about developing your relationship with the earth. And yeah, the plants are one way to do it. Animals are another way to do it. The elementals, there's all different things we talk about in the school that are points of connection back to the earth, back to the spirit. And we need to like build these points again because they've all been sheared off us all, right? The tyranny of convenience and all that stuff. We've lost all these connections. So to get them back, yes, you have to do the physical skills and you have to do some of the physical work, but it doesn't have to be gardening, right? It doesn't have to be medicinal herbal use. I've done, I do this thing where I go to people's land and I do kind of what I call an assessment. So I'm telling them who they have here on their land, why their land's so special. And it always involves me giving them some instructions about harvesting something and eating it or using it as tea or whatever, because this is where the integration starts. It's physical interaction with the earth, with the plants. That's important, but it's also the medicine of the plants are coming into you then. Their spirits coming into you. And we don't realize how powerful these wild plants are. Like our domestic plants were made that way so that, they're kind of like, like things like the terpenes and all these kind of chemicals that are the healing part of plants, they're in very small amounts in domestic vegetables. And then if it's chemically grown, they almost don't exist, the medicine. So the medicine in actual wild plants is incredible. And so even just the spiritual interaction to be taking some of that in, and it's how I learned about everything. It's how I connected with everything. Is just tasting stuff, right? Our mouth, our bodies are these incredible tools. Our fingers, everything is capable of so much reading. Like we can read everything with our senses. So, just to say, even if you have an urban existence, coming here is going to open you up in ways you can't imagine. And it might shift your urban existence a little bit too. I hate to, you know, say that, but it has happened many, many times. Someone just asked, do the hours you spend, can they help towards clinical hours? No, I wish they could. And they probably should, but I am not accredited that way. And so, yeah. But, that question reminds me like some people have funding opportunities to learn a new, uh, uh, to come up with a new business or a new skill set. And so the school has signed off on that for people so they could get funding to come to the school. It's just kind of like a technical thing, but that question reminded me of it. Okay, so I guess I'm thinking of wrapping it up. We're approaching the end of our hour here.
I put all the links for everything, and you can just remind them of that.
The links for everything
they're in the chat.
In the chat. Okay.
Just a reminder.
And
send us an email if you have
Yeah. So if you have any questions about the school or any such things like that, I'd love to hear from you. And yeah, blessings on Imbolc. That's coming up at midnight, I suppose. Tomorrow is our official spring, and you know that's it's an important time of year. It's hard to conceive when we're under 2 feet of snow and it's -30 out here, but the earth is coming back alive. You can see it in the basement. The potatoes start to grow on February 1st. You can see it in the greenhouse. My peaches start to produce peach buds, flower buds, February 1st. The cinnamon starts to produce its new shoots. So some things are very aware that this is the new year. This is the spring. Anything else, my dear? No. Okay, folks. Well, blessings. I hope you all have a good night and hold on for the winter and don't let all that madness that's happening south of the border worry you. It's all a good thing. It's all towards a good end, I believe. Okay. Be well. Hmm?
Okay.